Well, good morning, you saucy nuggets, and welcome to another episode of Unhinged. Definitely the first time we're talking about this. I'm I'm not Carl Choi. My name is the Magic Nate. I work with the 24/7 Comics team, and with me today for Unhinged, I have the one, the only Terry Kavanagh. How are you today, Terry?
Doing great. Thanks, Nate. And you?
Uh, Better now that we're actually live.
That we're live, yes. I'm gonna warn everyone that I'm in New Orleans at the moment. There have been major storms here today that took out my power earlier. So if I just vanish off the screen, it is not the rapture.
That's very good to know, and something that we're definitely going to be taking into consideration. Uh, if Today we are doing Unhinged. Unhinged is like your favorite type of podcast with some of the greatest creators out there. Uh, the only thing that you don't have to worry about is wearing pants.
Thank God.
Now the question is for you guys watching: am I wearing pants? Just
That's a little creepy.
leave your answer in the comments below. Like, let
That's
us
a little
know what.
creepy, Nate.
Terry, would you please tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Yes. We're going to be bringing on my good friend and arch enemy, Howard Mackie, who I've known for, oh God, way too long. Way too long. We've worked together on Spider-Man. I was his editor on a number of projects for Marvel Comics Presents. He notably never hired me as a writer for any of his projects when he was an editor. And it's not like I'm carrying that.
No,
Really,
not at all. No.
not at all.
So, without further ado, let's invite your frenemy, Howard Mackie.
How you
Hello,
doing, Nate?
Howard.
And what's his name?
Yeah, this is
Would you-
going to be
I
a
want
great.
to clarify just at the outset, I am not in New Orleans. I do have power, and I am wearing pants. And Terry knows why I never hired him as a writer for any of the projects I did.
It was the lack of pants.
Exactly.
This is going to be a good time. Howard, we're here just to get a little unhinged, talk a little bit about the industry and everything going on with, well, what people don't know happens, or some good stories. I hope you guys have some of those.
I don't know. Terry's point, we have known each other for 40 years.
Oh, stop with the math.
Because I've worked in the industry for 41 years, and I think you came in a year after me.
I
Right?
think so, around that.
So yes, and back then the industry was a little different. It was very
More fun.
What's that?
More fun.
Oh, it was definitely fun, and we were tasked at Marvel, especially back in the day, with having fun. I came in as an assistant editor to Mark Grunwald back in 1984, and we had one of the heaviest editorial workloads, but which included official handbook of Marvel Comics Presents, which took up so much time. But I also got to work on Walt Simonson's Thor run and the rest of the Avengers and all that. And there were times when it was pretty stressful, and we would get a book out the door, usually one of those two, Thor or Marvel Comics. I'm sorry, official handbook of Marvel Comics. And it was done. And I would say to Mark, as this younger, enthusiastic assistant, okay, let's get ahead on stuff. And he would say, nope, clean off your desk. And now we're going to have fun, which usually meant us making up rather silly songs about our colleagues around the office, which then Mark had us meaning me, because he was my boss, perform in the middle of the Marvel bullpen. And we were, the title of this is Unhinged. The editorial floor, and you tell me if you agree or not, Tara, it was the definition of unhinged. Long before any of the stuff you see about Places like Google or Facebook, the work environment, that kind of stuff. We were a bunch of kids basically who were shaving, and the people at the bean counters. We were on the 10th floor. Editorial was on the 10th floor. The bullpen was on the 10th floor, and the bean counters were on the 11th floor. And there was a staircase that ran between the two. Almost nobody from the 11th floor came down to the 10th floor because
they were afraid of us.
Yeah, they didn't understand us at all.
They just assumed we were in the middle of a food fight at any given time.
Yeah,
a food fight.
Or there were times when we would, long before paintball, and a big contingent of our staffers got very into paintball. But before that, we would stay after hours with rubber dart guns or these guns that shot these yellow bullets. And we would just attack each other or stay up after hours to do that kind of thing. Just a paintball kind of thing. And they sometimes didn't like it when we strayed to the 11th floor, and then the next day they were finding these stray bullets or darts.
Yeah, but you had to get the high ground.
Well, exactly. And if you could get at the top of the stairs shooting down, pretty much you had it covered. But there were times when they would start complaining to Tom DeFalco, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, or even prior to that, Jim Shooter, and say, you gotta reel these guys in. And the whoever was editor-in-chief at the time would pull out the sales figures, and present them and say, that gives us this.
Yeah,
and
not changing anything.
They just let it go. Working with Mark Grunewald, he was pretty much the source of all of
the shenanigans.
that we had back then.
Absolutely. Mark was very creative, not only as a comic book editor and writer, but as a morale booster for the entire company. He often, I've told some of these stories in previous Unhinged, but Howard, Ann and I were talking last week about when we were all tasked with stealing the
Michelle
Marsh ads from the subways and cutting out her face and wearing the masks whenever the tours came through.
Before I was on staff.
That was?
Yeah. But I made money on it because I got into the business because Mike Carlin was Mark's assistant at that point. And Mike told me, long before I even thought about working at Marvel, Mike told me, hey, you want to make a couple of bucks if you take these posters? Mark is paying $1 a pop. And I thought, yeah, what the hell? And
wait, if that was before you were on staff and I came on staff after you, why was I stealing posters? Oops.
Did you have your own
oops
Michelle Marsh?
All right, enough about that.
But yeah, and I was around for the Michelle Marsh day when I was on staff. It was that, as a matter of fact, I think it was one of my first days at Marvel, where we cut it out and we had the whole. I think I still have mine in a file somewhere. Because again, another Mark thing, I have stacks of things that Mark just made me save. He said, "Oh, it's going to be fun at some point," and so I've got a stack this high of just things like that. I'm sure I could recite some of the songs that we used to have to create.
Mark was absolutely the heart and soul of Marvel in those days.
Yep. And unfortunately, for your audience, or Nate, if you don't know, Mark Grunewald passed away suddenly in, I don't know, 1992, I think, 93.
No, Fox had been born.
Okay.
So it was 96 at least.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that was, it would have been that late. It was before everything collapsed in the industry and Marvel and all that, which to a
I
certain
think
extent.
he did it as a preemptive escape.
Probably, or as we've all suspected, this is the longest prank he ever has committed, because Mark was a big prankster, and we'll see how deep I go into some of the pranks that he enlisted me.
Make sure the statute of limitations are up.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but it was a fun time at Marvel. We would redo our office back in the day at Marvel, and Mark Grunwald, Elliot Brown, who was a longtime staffer at Marvel, an editor, writer, and Mike Carlin, who also he started out as Mark's assistant. Excuse me, as Mark's assistant, and then he became a full editor, which is how I got my job, replacing Mike. And then Mike left Marvel, not voluntarily, and went to DC Comics, where he ultimately became editor-in-chief.
Wait, Howard, was he a victim of the New Universe?
No. Shooter just had a grudge against him.
Okay.
I don't even remember what the specific. He was the first editor on X Factor, and Shooter had some issues with it, and that Mike pushed back. It was Mike probably, my recollection, was defending the creators.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually push came to shove, and he was out the door. But he did okay for himself.
Yeah.
He wound up at DC, and eventually became EIC at DC Comics. I don't think he really looked back after that. But the three of them had done a cable TV. What do you call it? Not just cable. It was it was Channel J in New York City.
No, that was the porn channel, Howard.
Yeah, I think it was the same. Public access.
Mm-hmm.
And they did I'm using big air quotes, a comedy show. It was called Cheap Laughs. You can find some of the episodes on YouTube now. It's Cheap, LAFFS. And he recruited a lot of Marvel staffers to do stuff. Again, he was my boss, so I had no choice. I had to do some of it. But the point I was getting to was that one of the very long skits they had involved a makeshift dungeon. And then when they were done with the show,
Sure, it was makeshift.
What's that?
Sure, it was makeshift. Yeah.
But it was for instance, Nate, you've got a background in the background, so that brick wall is not real.
It's to hide the bodies.
Yeah, perfect. That's what happened with the dungeon. But back then we didn't have access to that kind of stuff. So Elliot hand painted a what looked to be big cinder blocks or cobblestone type things. And if you look at it, it looks real on the screen. When they were done with that, we used that backdrop to decorate our office, and we even had a double door. Like, you walk in through the door, and you immediately were met by another door, and then you came in, and it looked like a dungeon, and that that was one time. Then another time, Mark was moving and was collecting boxes from the office, from the mailroom. So we lined the entire perimeter of our office with these stacks of boxes from floor to ceiling. And Mark had a key box that was supporting everything, okay, which was hooked to a string that ran under our carpeting, that ran to my desk drawer, okay? So that when I got a signal from Mark, which was usually, hey, Howard, could you give me that file or whatever? I would open the desk drawer, it would move the key box, and the entire thing would collapse in on whoever was standing in front of us, usually a freelancer. The one that stands out to me the most was Joe Rubenstein, because I remember us doing it, and he thought he was being so slick. He saw them coming and like stood holding the boxes right in front of him, but boxes were from all around, and they collapsed to the side. So that was the kind of thing. Then we after that, he decided Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief at the time. I don't know if you know, but Jim Shooter is like, 6'8", or I don't remember what he was, but he's very tall, and he liked to use that height to intimidate everyone, but mostly editors. So when he would walk into your office, and he would loom over your desk and just look at, you had to look up at him when he was talking to you, but he would look at whatever you were working on, artwork or whatever that was in front of you. And Mark was tired of that. Mark was not overly tall either. So we built a platform in our office, which was about 3 feet high. And our flat files went underneath. There was a trap door and there was a mattress underneath. So one person, Jack Morelli, spent the night there once when he was out in the city too late and had probably a little too much to drink, so he crashed.
He lived in the city, Howard. So...
No, not at the time. I think he was.
Oh, not that. Okay.
And we were the first office, and then our desks went up on the platform. So the first time Shooter came in to kind of, loom over us, he had to suddenly, when he was talking to us, he had to look up to talk to us, and he could see nothing on our desks at all. So that was the kind of stuff we did on a regular basis. And then I wound up turning it around on Gregory Wright, who replaced me as Mark's assistant. We used to work with Paul Ryan, the artist Paul Ryan, who was, I'm only talking about dead people today. We'll
have a seance later.
I'm not dead yet. He had never met Paul. Paul was a very tidy individual. He had always, prior to writing comics or drawing comics, I don't remember what he did, but he would
probably advertising.
Yeah, he showed up at the office wearing a suit and tie, usually a 3-piece suit and all that. He didn't look like the typical comic book person. If you've met comic book people, we're not known for overly dressing, unless you're Bill Sienkiewicz, and Paul Ryan, and JR. I'm sorry, there's a bunch that do dress neater, but I knew he had not met Paul, and I knew how Paul presented, so I convinced Paul to go in on a prank of saying that he was from Marvel Corporate, and he came in to read Greg the Riot Act about having this unapproved platform in the office, and he had Greg going pretty severely. I think Greg was probably wetting his pants. I hope Greg is listening to this so he can argue against that. But yeah, I mean that was the kind of stuff that we did all the time, and I truly believe that the fun we had produced the results that we got in terms of sales. That was
absolutely,
that was our thing.
And it was not just tolerated, it was encouraged. It really was. You guys often hid under that platform when Shooter or someone else would come in as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You hit, and wasn't there a period where there were a bunch of New Universe comics all torn apart and balled up like a giant ball pit?
Oh yes, and then Mark would do backflips off the platform into this ball pit of crumpled up New Universe comics. Jim Shooter was not editor-in-chief at that time.
Boy, that would not have happened.
No, but yes, I never did the dive off of the platform. Mark was braver than I.
Good thinking.
Yes, but yeah,
a bunch of New Universe comics were also used. Yeah, this is not something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Yeah, at an effigy burning party at John Byrne's house at one point. And so a giant dummy was stuffed with New Universe comics and set on fire.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm not really proud of it because it wasn't a very honorable moment, but it was a good release.
I was going to say that's what it was. It was the stress that we were experiencing at that time.
Yes.
It was a way to just get it out of our system, because it was either that or quit or explode at somebody.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it was the better way to go, quite frankly.
Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah,
it probably was.
I mean, it's not like it did anything.
No, but it was a joy, and it didn't affect what happened to that person that had already been done. And it was a joint thing that we all got to share in that release.
Yeah, it was team bonding, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Team bonding by burning an effigy. That.
This was the 90s.
It was also a way to clean out the office of unnecessary comic books.
Yes, exactly.
You have to look at the upsides.
Yes.
I fully support all of this. I do agree, though, that like a workplace where you can joke around or pull pranks and do things like that is definitely needed. I have my own list of shenanigans from different places I've worked at over the years that may or may not have involved live animals at some point. But this is the kind of stuff I love to talk about and hear.
Speaking of live animals, at one point, one of the pranks we did was, again, Greg Wright, who replaced me as Mark's assistant. I don't remember even why we did this, but we emptied out his desk drawer and lined it with plastic, okay, filled it with water, and then put goldfish in there, and then closed the drawer. But before he got into the office, and then he came to look for something. Mark probably did. Hey, Greg, can you hand me that? Whatever. And there was a drawer filled with water and live goldfish, and he really wasn't sure what to do with it. And Carl Potts, who was an editor at Marvel at that time and had the office next door, he said, "Oh, I have an empty fish tank," and he took the goldfish, filled up the fish tank, and they had a nice life in Marvel Comics for some time. Yes. Well, Carl wasn't going to let us throw the fish away, flush them, for God's sakes.
We also, at one point, and I don't remember whose desk this was, we went in the middle of the night and sort of turned the desk upside down and then pulled the drawers out and then put them back in upside down and then turned the desk back upright. So when they opened their drawers, it just all fell out because the drawers were upside down in there. It sounds like we had a lot of extra time on our hands, actually.
It does, but I think it was stress release.
Yeah, it was.
It was because we also worked until the work got done.
Yes.
Back then.
And they were monthly periodicals. It hung over your head. Even when you got one issue out, you were already aware of, oh, I'm only 3.5 weeks out from to getting the next issue out.
Right.
And if the writer was late by 4 days, then that cost the penciler 4 days that they would have to make up, or the inker, etc. So
Always the artist's fault. Always.
yeah,
I say
sure.
it.
And he says that as a writer. But it was you know, that was a big part of our job. Our job was shepherding the characters, but we also had to butler the creators. And you couldn't bully creators into doing anything creative. You had to massage them into it. It was wrangling the creators was a big part of the job.
Yeah.
So there was stress from both ends. There was stress from the creators, and if they got behind on something, I heard some of the greatest excuses in my life from creators along the way, and it was also stress then from the shipping department. You wanted to get the books out on time. It mattered at that point if you missed shipping. It doesn't seem to matter now in comic books, but it mattered then. It made the comics returnable from the direct sales. So you really wanted to be on time. And
well, then it verged on a fireable offense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my trick, and I really don't understand why other editors didn't do this, but I did not share my trick with them, was we had unlimited expense accounts. And so I made sure at least once a week, I was taking the shipping department people out to lunch, not just the other creators or the freelancers, which is really what it was for. But I took the shipping department out. And so if I handed in a book a little late, they moved it to the top of the pile. And consequently, in my 6 years on staff there, I never missed shipping once. It's not because I got my books in more on time than the others, because I bribed the shipping department.
See, Terry relied on bribery. I like to go to lunch with the shipping department occasionally. For me, I'm just naturally charming, and so they often did it for me because of that, because I was just so damn charming that they couldn't say no. And I too never had a book miss shipping, and there were several that should have.
Yes. Wait, and speaking to excuses from freelancers, I had one that I'll give as an example that Howard was involved in, because this is how he rolled. Howard was writing a ghostwriter serial for me for Marvel Comics Presents. Again, another example of me giving him work, but him never giving me any work. And he was writing that for me, and we had an artist, a very, very, very talented artist on that series, who I came in one morning and there was a message on my answering machine saying he had just realized, this artist had just realized that he was afraid of motorcycles.
The flaming motorcycle in particular, I think. The flaming motorcycle was my recollection.
I had to call him and ask, what exactly are you afraid of? Are you afraid of drawing them? Are you afraid of riding them? Are you afraid they're going to burst through your window and attack you? And he basically admitted to all three. So I called up Howard and I said, Howard, moving forward on this serial, could you maybe minimize, this was that artist's excuse for being a little late on pages. And I said, Howard, could you maybe minimize the use of Ghost Rider's motorcycle in the upcoming chapters?
You know, Ghost Rider, whose whole thing, the rider part, is he rides a friggin' flaming motorcycle.
It's sort of there in the name.
But I'm a very sensitive individual to the needs of others.
Yes. So what Howard did was, the very next plot from him, he had some demon or someone blast Ghost Rider's motorcycle into 1,000 little motorcycles.
It was a double-page spread.
Yeah, and I had to call up Howard, and I'm like, yeah, thanks for your help, Howard. Always a pleasure.
I think it got done.
It got done, but I had to do more wrangling than usual with that particular storyline.
Screw that with the baby excuse. Ooh, I'm afraid of a Ghost Rider.
You wanted people to be afraid of Ghost Rider. So you had succeeded.
Yes.
Don't take it out on them, man.
One person. No, just do your job.
That was one of the many odd excuses we would get. I remember one person saying to me at one point, we had an electrical storm in my area last night, so I was afraid to approach my typewriter, which I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. Maybe it was an electric typewriter. It was certainly well before computers, so yeah. I don't know what that was about.
I had at least one artist who I lost count at 4 or 5 grandparents that died.
Yeah.
And
well, you say that, and I've told this story before, so I apologize, but and Jay Lee knows that I tell this story. When I first hired him, he was doing a Marvel Comics Presents stuff for me before I put him on Namor, and he was maybe 17 years old, definitely the youngest person I'd ever hired. And at one point he called me up and said he was going to need an extra 2 weeks on his deadline because the new Legend of Zelda game or some game had just come out. And I had to say, Jay, come on, man. I don't care how many of your grandparents die, but you need to come up with better excuses than that, really, moving forward. And I didn't give him the extra time, which I'm sure just meant he didn't sleep. He was 17, so he could do both. But I'm like, you just got to get better at your excuses. It's like I would tell my kids when they were growing up and they would lie, I would say, this I thought was good parental advice. You know, if you're going to lie, you have to get better at it. You really have to be a better liar, which I don't know that my wife appreciated that kind of parental advice. It was probably around then that she stopped allowing me to be with the kids unsupervised.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like before social media became the time suck for every creative individual, especially if you're using a computer. You know, oh, here, let me just, well, it starts out, let me check my emails, let me check Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever. Before that existed, it was video games, because the mindset for creatives was one that was very attracted to video games. And there were times, I mean, or, often artists will have the TV on in the background because they can do it. I remember I used to get into, I was very good friends with Tom Palmer, by far one of the best and most talented inkers in the industry.
Wonderful, wonderful man.
Yes, who, again, unfortunately, I'm talking about somebody who passed away a couple of years ago. But he...
Wait, sorry to interrupt, Howard. A gift from Tom Palmer. Oh. All right, Howard, you don't have to one-up me on everything.
Oh, mine's bigger. Just saying.
Well, maybe your picture is, but...
Yeah, you're Irish. Anyway, I would, after I left staff, Tom would, and I became a freelance writer, and Tom would call me in the middle of the day. And you never had a short conversation with Tom. It's like saying you had a short conversation with Walter Simonson. They don't exist. And I always, and they were good friends too. And I just couldn't imagine how a conversation with them ever ended when they talked to each other on the phone. Anyway, Tom would call me and we would just chat and chat and chat. And eventually I would say, hey, Tom, after like an hour and a half or 2 hours, I'd say, hey, Tom, what have you been working on? He's, oh, well, I'm just sitting here right now and I'm putting down zipatone or I'm spotting blacks, all the things in his repertoire. And I said, oh, that's really cool. Do you know what I've been doing for the last 2 hours? He said, oh no, what? I said, I've been talking to you because I'm a writer and I can't ply my trade while I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes, that was back in the days before we could just text each other.
Yes. I've had experience now, having done some work for Zenoscope as a writer and editor a few years ago for a couple of years. Some of the people as an editor that I called the creators told me they'd never spoken to another human being about work in their life. It was all done through emails. And I could not understand that, because so much gets lost in emails. And it's good to always have a personal connection, a personal conversation with your writer, your letterer, your inker, your penciler, your colorist, everyone. You have to do that occasionally. So I would always be stunned when they would say, "Oh, you're the first person I've ever spoken to from Zenescope."
It goes back to what you had said earlier, in terms of dealing with production, is that being an editor is more of an art than people know. It's not just a craft. It's an art to get people to do things for you, because you've made that personal connection. I once I was given an assignment when I first became a full editor, and we were Marvel was taken over by New World Productions, and Tom DeFalco came into me with 2 movies.
That sounds creepy.
Came into me. Tom DeFalco came to my office.
Okay, that sounds better.
And he threw 2 screenplays down on my desk and said, and one was for House 2, the second story, very, very creative title.
Very clever.
And the other one was RoboCop 2. And this was, when were Virginia meetings? Thursday afternoons, I think, or Thursday mornings?
I don't know.
Or maybe it was Tuesday. Anyway, he threw these 2 scripts down on my desk, and he said, "Yeah, just so you know, whenever anybody references Tom, you have to do the accent. So Tom talks like this, and I've done this on panels sitting right next to him because Tom's from the Bronx." Anyway, he said, "Yeah, we need these 2 done as 44-page black and white books, and you're already late." And meaning I had to get going on this right away. So I went up to this scheduling meeting that we had once a week, and went around. Virginia Ramita was our production manager, and she was going around saying, asking where everything was, all the stages. And she got to me and she said, "Okay, I have these 2 new things. There's House 2 and RoboCop 2. Howard, where are you on this? Do you have writers yet?" Literally had received the scripts a half an hour earlier. And I looked around the table of my fellow editors and I said, "Oh yeah, no, I found them. House 2 is going to be done by," and I looked at Ralph Macchio, and he unfortunately made eye contact with me, and I threw the script down on the table and pushed it to him, and I said, "Ralph Macchio's adapting this." And I had the other one, RoboCop 2, and I said, "Oh, Bob Harris is doing this." And they both went, "Whoa, no. And Tom DeFalco said, "So it is said, so it is done." And so they wrote those, but the House 2 one I had to get done so fast because they wanted it to come out before the movie did. And I had to, I think I recruited, I think Alan Kupperberg he did breakdowns for me, laid out the entire book really loose. And then this is going back to how you get people to do things for you. I recruited some of the biggest names in the industry at the time amongst inkers who could finish things off. So I had everyone from Tom Palmer to Klaus did some pages. Al, his name just went right out of my head.
Milgram?
No, but I think I got it.
Williamson.
Al Williamson. I mean, these were big names, as well as like the guy that worked, Harry Candelario, who wanted to be an inker, but he wasn't yet, and he worked in the stat room. I said, "Hey, Harry, can you do a page or 2 for me?" I think I got Pat Redding, and I mean, everybody got it. And it was only because I was able to call them up and say, "I need this favor," and that they did that for me. But yeah, it was a different time. I've also done work for Marvel since, and I've had for a 4-issue limited series. I only had one conversation with the editor, which
that's amazing.
Just blows my mind.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
insane.
It was
I mean,
all personal connections. Sorry, Nate, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say like it's insane to see production happening like that, and a shameless plug and segue from what you were saying about having some of the biggest names out there join you. I mean, this could be a good time for a quick commercial break to show folks that if you go to 247comics.com, we have web store, we have some interesting stuff, uh, but also we have Heroes Be Damned, where this very own Terry Kavanagh, along with Vince, are bringing one of the craziest stories out there. If you just follow that link to our, make sure the link is, oh, what happened? Oh, there we go. If you follow that link, it'll take you to our Kickstarter pre-launch page. And here you can sign up. All you have to do is hit that little button that says notify me for launch, and you'll get to hear all about the fantastic things that are coming up, especially as we get closer and closer to our launch date. I want to see that this number keep going up, the 139 followers, because you guys are the ones backing this and supporting everybody. So if you like Terry's shenanigans, if you like Vince and Nicholas, then please jump into that. Additionally, if you're a big fan of 24/7 comics, and you like this amazing fancy hat that I'm wearing, just another shameless plug, head over to our web store. You can also be as cool as Magic Nate and get yourself one of the hats. And one more plug. Speaking of the video games thing, Howard and Terry, just as a little Easter egg going for everybody, if you go to 247comics.com/HBD runner, it'll actually take you to our very own little video game going on where you can play as one of the superheroes as you're running through the city, and you can do your best to get on the leaderboard. If you get on the leaderboard, then we'll probably actually send you a special ash can of our Heroes Be Damned issue 1, which is pretty awesome, just in my personal opinion. But I heard the video game thing. I'm like, I have to show people that Heroes Be Damned is going to be awesome. Terry, I'm sure that you can speak to that yourself. But
I can. I didn't know about that game. That looks fun. I'm going to try it afterwards. Yeah, Vince Sinico is the writer and artist, along with Nick. I think he co-wrote with Nick. Incredible talent. It's a wild, wild story. It's part superhero action. It's part horror. It's part mystery about a character who is killing off all super characters, villains, and heroes. And it is a wild, wild ride. I am just the editor on it, but man, have I enjoyed working on this title with those guys. And I've said this before, I'm always somewhat concerned about a writer-artist being the same person, because with rare exceptions, like, the John Burns and the Alan Davises and the Walt Simonsons, sometimes you get the writer part of that person might skimp a little, figuring they can make it up in the art, or vice versa. That is not the case here at all. Vince is all in on everything.
I love it, and it's been actually incredible working with you guys on this, and it just reminded me of some of what you were saying, Howard, with some of your stories. We are just a rowdy bunch, and we like having a little bit of fun together and trying different things. I know in our meeting yesterday, we have something else coming down the line for everybody else. Just keep an eye out. It expands Heroes Be Damned to something more than just a book that you're going to get. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that was a really solid segue, right? So
Yeah.
Well played, Nate.
Speaking of Kickstarters,
yeah, speaking of different methods and whatnot, we have this video game and we have our Kickstarter. Yeah, I love hearing these shenanigans. Back in the day, I used to work for a camp on Catalina, and uh, just thinking about your goldfish stuff, like one of the pranks that we had was the younger staff would tie a rope around the different cabins that slept about 8 people, and I was in charge of I was the business manager for the camp, and they younger staff decided to tie up my individual cabin. So once I got out, I thought I'd teach them a lesson. I put crunchy peanut butter on their doorknob, and because it's Catalina Island and there's wildlife everywhere, I woke up to the beautiful screams of these younger kids because there was a bison chewing the crunchy peanut butter off of their doorknob. So when they opened the door, there was just a big old bison head, and they freaked out. So I walked out with my coffee mug, and I was like, "Good morning, boys," and I walked away.
That's sweet how you endanger children.
No, they know what's going on. It's wildlife.
They got to learn somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
that actually happened to me, to my wife and I, on our honeymoon. We had our honeymoon in the Caribbean, Antigua, and it was at a resort, self-contained resort, right on the ocean. And I guess what they did, because not a lot of grass, feed, all that on the island. The local farmers at night, until just before sunrise, they would bring their cows and goats on to the premises, and that was in lieu of that they ate the grass in lieu of mowing. Okay, so one morning, the sun is just starting to come up, and my side of the bed was right near the window, and I'm just hearing this, this odd noise. And I decide to pull back the curtain to see what it is, and literally there was a friggin' cow. This just the metal screen separated, and I'm sure I let out a shriek that was unmanly enough that my wife was questioning, why did I marry this guy? but no, they did that, and part of their responsibilities was they followed the animals through there and they cleaned up after them so that there was no droppings, as it were.
That's smart.
Yeah. So,
wait, I just want to mention, I know Howard has a hard stop in like 8 minutes.
Yeah, it's flexible. Apparently, I keep checking my phone to see where my family is, and also to see if I've been elected as Pope by the conclave. Yeah,
there's a good chance.
From what I understand, anybody can.
There's a good chance. So I was going to say, if anybody has any questions, anybody watching has any questions, get them in now.
Yeah. And hey, California Comics, thanks for watching the stream. Hopefully you're going to share this with so many other people because this has just been absolutely ridiculous. I love good pranks. This is fun.
Yes. All right, Howard, what was the most fun comic you ever worked on as editor or writer? And it's okay to say one of mine.
Yes. Every comic I ever worked on with Terry Kavanagh, who was the best editor that I've ever worked with. Here, are my eyes blinking? I'm doing Morse code. Like, save me.
Check's in the mail, Howard.
He has somebody standing right off to the side with.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've written a lot of stuff, and I know most of the work I've done was for Marvel. And all joking aside, and I hate getting sincere. Terry is one of the best editors I ever worked with. It is a part of it is because of our friendship, but that can go south. That can wind up
any minute now.
Both, yeah, exactly. But also, I think it helps working with somebody who I do respect as not only an editor but as a writer, even though I never gave him any writing work. And so we speak the same language. I mean, honestly, Tara, some of the most fun I had recently was when you and I were consulting on the Marvel Heroes project, the TV show.
For Disney Plus.
What we were charged with was helping with the 4-page stories. Yeah. And I remember the first time we sat down, because we went down to the production offices of the company that was producing these TV spots. We met with a series of the directors to get insight about the kids and what we were going to do, and then we thought, okay, now we'll go home and we'll figure stuff out. And what they said was, oh no, this all sounds great. We've got an office for you. Mm-hmm. We've cleared an office out for you. So why don't you just go in there and work? And fortunately, I brought my laptop with me, and I remember sitting on one side of the desk. Terry was on the other side. And it felt as close to the way, as a kid, I thought comic books were done. Mm-hmm. What would happen was he and I would talk some stuff out, and I'd say, okay, wait, give me a second. I have an idea. And I would write something out just very quickly. And then I would turn the laptop around to Terry on the other side of the desk. He'd go, oh, no, I like this. But what about if you do this? And I went, oh yeah, that's great. And I turned the computer back around, and I would start it all over again. And it was such a collaborative experience. And unlike any, I mean, we weren't able to do that kind of stuff when we were working at Marvel. I mean, we went out to those expense account lunches, and we had conversations, and we did it that way. But it was the immediacy of it that was genuinely fun. And it also made it fun for me because they were such short stories that it became a puzzle on how to make a story that concise. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. I would love to say, I mean, I did a lot of stuff at Marvel. Ghost Rider was a blast, but it became its success became a weight. I mean, it was, nobody expected Ghost Rider to succeed when we first. As a matter of fact, Marvel didn't want the sales and marketing department tried to kill Ghost Rider before it launched. My version of Ghost Rider, because they, I was and they were correct. I was a relatively new writer working with a relatively new art team of Javier Saltares and Mark Texera, and on a character who had failed because of low sales. And they put every roadblock in our way before that, before the book got approved. And finally it got approved because Tom DeFalco was tired of taking bullshit and just said, yeah, fuck it, we're just publishing it. And it bore out. I mean, and then Terry and I worked on Spider-Man together, and the much beloved Clone Saga. But I mean, for me, it was less about the projects, particularly, than it was about the people I got to work with. Honestly, I mean, we became like, we were all in our early 20s, mid 20s when we all were working at Marvel, and I count many, Terry and our other friend Bob Harris I count them amongst my best friends. They're as close. I only have sisters. They're as close to brothers as I have. But it was the relationships that we made back then. We forged these. It was the equivalent. You tell me, Tara, but it was the equivalent of college experience. We were there. I mean, I was on staff at Marvel for 7 years, and I still. I mean, there are people I'm still on a regular basis in touch with Terry and Bob Harris and Tom DeFalco, even though he was the editor-in-chief and could be an asshole at times.
Tom and I had a lot of very loud discussions, and I think Tom is the next guest on this next week.
Oh, cool. And tell him I told this story that I'm about to tell. Okay? Because he loves when I tell it. No. So I was the editor on the New Universe books because I drew the short straw. And as a matter of fact, I got promoted to that position because the previous editor had been fired, and I was next in line. There was a hierarchy. And when I heard I was going to get the position, I went into DeFalco, who was the executive editor, not the editor-in-chief. Jim Shooter was still editor-in-chief at that particular time. And I found out I was getting the promotion. And instead of saying, oh, great, more money and more, oh, it's going to be fun and all that, I went into Tom and I said, Tom, is there anything you can do to make it so I don't get this position? And Tom, in his inimitable style, and this is not even the story I'm going to that I want to tell. That's more about. He looked at me and said, "Yeah, the thing of it is, Mr. Howard, you're fucked no matter what." He said, "Because if you take the job, you probably what was his line? You got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel."
Yeah.
And so you're going to be out the door. But if you don't take it, you're never getting promoted because he will, the editor-in-chief will see it as an insult, and you just won't get a job.
Just to clarify, the new Universe books that Howard was getting promoted into editing were the brainchild of the editor-in-chief, and he had a vision for it that really no one could live up to. No one could execute because we didn't live in his head, and he had a vision for how every panel on every page should go. And no one was successfully pulling that off, which is why there was a history of people dropping like flies.
But
sorry, Howard, go ahead.
No. But like a week after I got that promotion, I had scheduled a vacation with my wife. We had paid for a place down in Florida. We had our flights and all that. Under normal circumstances, getting that kind of promotion, I might have chosen to reschedule the vacation so I could throw myself into work. But I thought, fuck, this may be the only vacation I get in some time because I'm about to get fired. So I went. And then that editor-in-chief got fired while I was away. And I think it was a day.
I had the pleasure of calling Howard and telling him.
I was just going to say, a day or two later, I'm on the beach trying to just not think about work and all that. And we were renting this place with my mother-in-law. And it was, it was like a condo on beach, big thing. I'm on the beach. All of a sudden I hear my mother-in-law calling me from the balcony upstairs. And she said, Howard, there's a phone call for you, because it's before cell phones. It's somebody from the office. And I went, so I go up. I'm assuming
fired already.
Yes, exactly. Well, I get upstairs and it's Terry, and he says to me, "Did you hear the news?" And I said, "Terry, what are you talking about?" Because again, before cell phones, before the internet, before anything, he said Shooter was fired 2 days ago, and I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah," and I realized nobody had told you. So I don't even know to this day how you got our phone number, but I
got a guy.
Exactly. Anyway, and it made the rest of my vacation very relaxing. But now we fast forward to I'm on the New Universe. I'm doing one of the special books we did. I don't remember if it was The Pit or I think it was The War. It was like when we were getting to the end of the new universe and we were going to make everything big and explosive. And the book was really late. To Terry's point earlier, it was in real jeopardy of missing shipping. And but it was an awkward situation because Mark Grunwald was my, he was my friend, he was my mentor. I miss him all the time. I started out as his assistant, and now he was executive editor, and he was kind of charged with overseeing the new universe. So he took a really, he kept it in his field of vision, and he wrote one of the titles, and he had a lot of rewrites he wanted on this book, and so it delayed it more. So now it's the day I have to get it out. Okay. And literally, I'm in my office. My assistant is at his desk, the other side, and it was, I think, spring, because I had the window wide open behind me to get fresh air in. And I'm literally putting the page numbers down on this book, which, literally, gluing them down so that, when you read a comic book and you see the page number down there, at some point that was something I did or Terry did or whoever. And Tom walks in and I'm frantic. We got to get this out the door. Tom walks in. It's around lunchtime. I'm working through lunch. And he said, "Mr. Howard." Yeah, Tom, I'm trying to get, he said, "Do you got any salt?" I don't, well, that's a weird question. I'm trying to get, but yeah, hold on a second, because we frequently ordered out or whatever. So I open up one of my drawers, the one without the goldfish, and I you got napkin, salt, pepper, ketchup. I grab some salt and I hand it to him. And Tom, thinking he was being very funny, he takes a page out from in front of me, okay, and he opens the salt packet. And he dumps it all over the page. And I guess I'm glad he didn't use ketchup. And he said, because I figure we might as well eat this book for all the good it's going to do us because of how late it is. And I lost it. And according to my assistant at the time, in a really scary way, because I didn't get loud at all. I just looked at him silently for a little bit. And I looked down at the book and I look up at him again. I look at the open window behind me and I pick up, it was a 44 page, or maybe even 64 page book. I pick the book up and I have it in my hands and I look back at the open window again, at which point David, my assistant, can see the dominoes falling in my head, because I'm ready to just turn around and say, okay, fine, fuck it, and just throw it out the window. And David walks across the room and he is attempting to grab the book out of my hands. Like I'm just clenching it at this point.
You could just close the window.
What's that?
Yeah, you could have just closed the window.
Done that. Well, you had to get by me. Anyway, and he said, "Howard, we really need to make a copy of this before we send it out." And he pulls it out of my hand and he goes off, closes the door behind him, and I exploded at Tom. Just exploded at, and that's my fun Tom story. He loves when I tell that story. He apologizes to me for that. He said, "Well, I thought it was funny at the time." I said, "Oh, probably was to everyone but me."
Yeah, I'll bring it up next week, Howard.
Oh, please.
There's a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So Stan, thank you for watching, and thank you everybody for watching us too. Stan asks, does Mr. Mackie have any superstitions for creating?
Creating what? Stan? Creating Ghost Rider?
Stories.
What story?
Do you have any?
Oh, you mean just in writing in general?
Yeah.
No, well, Terry has experienced this. I'm not a big fan of talking about story before I write story. I feel like it it takes some of the wind out of my sails when I talk it through. I prefer, like, even working with Terry as an editor, sometimes it works different for different people. You know, Terry, Terry's, again, God, I hate complimenting him. I do so much better with the insults. But Terry, actually, I will compare Terry to Tom DeFalco. They're both really good, insightful story people. They, if you're writing something, they're able to look at what you've written and make suggestions. Like, okay, I see what you did here, but what about if you just did, and not in a big, oh, I want you to change it, just work with you. But at the very beginning part of my process, I can't have that, because if I do that to, like, if Terry and I are working on something together, and we have, that's fine, because that's part of the collaborative thing. But if it's my story that I'm writing, I need it just to move around in my recently damaged brain. See, I can fit that into any conversation. So that is one of my major superstitions, I guess, is that I just don't like to talk about story, because I think something that stuck with me years ago was I read a quote that a writer writes. And so until I put it down on paper, or, you know, use the keyboard on the screen, whatever, it's not writing. It's the same as the stuff that I got in trouble with in, you know, grammar school from the nuns. And, you know, I'm just, you know, I'm just daydreaming until it goes down in a concrete form. So,
and let me use this to segue into a little bit of a plug, but to Howard talking about collaboration, it is one of the great joys of the comic book industry that we collaborate. We never face a blank page alone. You can call up the artist and say, what do you feel like drawing right now? And then that can be a springboard in your mind for what you're going to do, or you can do the same with the editor, or you can play with something happening in another comic book. But Howard and I have a company called inksmith.com, INKSMYTH, as in inks and myth. And what we do is custom comics for people as high-end gifts. And an example of what Howard was saying about how we could work together. Howard's the head writer on that. I tend to be the editor. We were doing a project for one of our clients, and Howard had handed in a plot, and it was pretty much complete. These are 12-page stories. But then I threw out an idea. Thank you. I threw out an idea like, well, what if we do this? And it meant Howard was going to have to rewrite. I wasn't saying get rid of anything you've done, but add this element. And it meant he would have to rewrite. So he basically said, I hate your guts, and then hung up and incorporated that idea and wrote it. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Howard?
I'm not sure I do. Which
it
one?
Was
because I know I've hated your guts so much that.
Well, it was the Superman-y book, and we had just written it as a solo story, and then I suggested throwing in the rest of the family as family dynamic.
Yes. Yeah. No, but I mean, and that is, see, and I can accept that kind of thing from Terry in a way that I can't necessarily from other editors, because, again, a lot of it comes down to trust. If you trust your editor, you trust their abilities, both as an editor and as a writer, which I do, despite never having given him any writing work. It makes that part easier. And the best editors are the ones that do throw out the suggestions. I also think the best writers are the ones that are open to those suggestions.
Absolutely.
Because there are some guys who you can't make suggestions to. They don't want any editorial input at all, which I think is a mistake for everyone. I can always, if I read a story, whether it's a comic book story or a novel, I can tell when the writer is not open to editorial input, when they think that what they do is the only thing that counts. And it's sad quite frankly, because I think the best editor acts as a partner and a sounding board, and to which I have experienced working with Terry, and to cut yourself off from that aspect of it is a disservice not only to the readers but to yourself, in my opinion.
And to the story. It's a disservice.
Well, it should all be about the story. Yes.
You don't have to take the advice of an editor, but you should be open to listening to it, as opposed to the people that their defenses just go up immediately, and it might, if their defenses didn't go up, they might have absorbed that as a good idea that they could then run with and make it even better. Not just do what the words the editor said, but make it even better. If they shut down on that, it's a disservice to everybody.
Yep, agreed.
Hey Jane, thanks for watching. She wants to know, what are your craziest ideas that have been implemented in books?
Howard, you
go ahead, Chair.
No, you go. That I've actually written into books or edited into books, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to think about that.
Clones? Clones?
We don't talk about the clone.
We got to talk a little bit about the clones. Let's be honest.
I'm going to get my basic apology out of the way to start. Yes, Howard and I pitched that story. It was pitched as there were 4 titles at the time, Howard, and I think you say it was pitched as a 3-month story arc, so it would have appeared in maybe 12 issues. It was
a year's worth of stories.
Ben Reilly as the real Spider-Man, and we would have a single Peter Parker who had not finished school. We would get him back to his roots. As we creators aged and got married and got mortgages, we sort of wrote the character down that path foolishly. And we discussed what to do about it. We discussed killing off Mary Jane or divorcing them, but that would have added more baggage to the character, and we were trying to clean it up. So yes, we pitched that story, but it was we had a beginning, middle, and an end. We planned it out with everybody involved. It was going to be clean, concise, and get to where organically we wanted to get the character to, rather than force him into it. It would even allow Peter and Mary Jane to walk off in the sunset pregnant, and Peter, following the whole with great power comes great responsibility, he would now understand that with great power comes great responsibility to his family. And they would walk off into
Terry, I think we lost your audio.
And we would have the right...
Terry.
What?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
He says
Did I
lost your audio.
Can you guys hear each other?
I can hear him.
I can hear you, Howard. I can hear you, Nate.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Nate?
Nate can't hear anybody. Well, hopefully other people can.
There we go.
All right. Well, hopefully other people could hear through that.
Hey, good thing it wasn't the 2 old guys that screwed up on the tech end.
So anyway, we got to this point. We significantly increased sales on the books, and then marketing sales kept coming down and saying, you can't end this. You have to drag this out. So consequently, it went on for about 2.5 years. And I will point people, because I do this just to annoy Howard, I will point people to a movie that's broken into little parts that ran on Tubi, I think, but I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, called Slugfest. Where they interviewed, one of the chapters is Send in the Clones. It's theoretically about the competition between Marvel and DC, and they theorized that we did the clone story in response to the death of Superman, which was not the case at all. But so they interviewed both Howard and I for this 8-minute segment. And then they also hired actors to play us in reenactments of what's going on. And I don't know who the actor was, but he was some very good-looking guy to play me. And then no insult to anyone out there, but they hired Bobby Moynihan from Saturday Night Live to play Howard. Howard refuses to watch it. You still haven't watched it, have you, Howard?
Never seen it.
Yeah, but that's why I like to pitch, I like to point people in this direction as often as possible. Everyone go and watch that. So, yes, all that is a long-winded way to say you could argue that The Clone was one of the most out there things I've ever been involved in, but it had great intentions and the execution went south, not through any fault of the creators.
No.
Fair, Howard?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I remember when they asked us to stretch the story, to your point, we had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I remember saying to marketing people, do we need to tell you how story works? Yeah. Because you can't just have a beginning and a middle. And that's what the Clone Saga, that it was never pitched as a saga. It was a story arc. And we did think 3 months with 4 titles is the equivalent of 12. It is 12 issues, which is the equivalent of a year's worth of story. But then because it was doing well, they wanted more. And that's then editorial started getting shifted around, and everybody who came in wanted to have their fingerprints on the story and all that. And suddenly it was 2.5 years later, and we were just like going around and around and around.
It was all filler. The middle was all filler.
Oh yeah. So anyway, any other questions? Because I am starting. I think my lunch is arriving shortly.
Ooh. We'll open it up. Give them a second. Again, if you guys haven't had a chance, great time for a quick shameless plug, just in case anybody else has any comments coming in. If you haven't checked it out, head over to the 24/7 Comics website, click the link to join the Kickstarter, because y'all need to join that, and it's going to be so awesome. So you can be the first to be notified about the launch of Heroes Be Damned. And for the next few Fridays, we're running that high score, guess you can call it high score giveaway on the our little runner video game. So give that a check out. I don't think there's anything else coming in. Howard, on behalf of everybody, Unhinged and absolutely out of our minds, I want to thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. Hopefully you had fun.
Yeah, what's not to? He gave me an open mic to just do the stuff that my wife is bored of hearing about. So yes, thank you. It was great having
thank
the
you, Howard.
It was great having me. Yes,
great having you to my home.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you so much, and Terry, thank you as always, and to all of you watching at home. I am wearing pants today, just to end the game that way.
Okay. Wait, Howard, do not disconnect.
Yes.
This needs to upload.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you next week on the next stream of Unhinged. Take care.
Thanks.
Take care.